I don't believe in coincidence, ladies and gentlemen. Coincidence is just God's way of remaining anonymous, right? I'm holding hands with two men. And back then, ladies, I had PMS. Men have PMS worse than you'll ever have it. Amen? Power, money, and success. I was at the top of my game. I'd been to L.A., Los Angeles, and a company kept offering me more money. And I told them no 5 times, but the 6th time I accepted it. Greed, right? Power, greed, and arrogance. I went out there and they wined and dined me in Beverly Hills, and man, I thought I was something. And I accepted the job offer, and I knew I shouldn't. On the way back to Kansas City, where we lived at the time, the engines went out at 28,000 feet, and we dropped 16. I'm holding hands with two men. Now listen, the twins, these men were identical twins. Am I meant to be here? I'm holding hands with these two men. We're getting ready to meet our Maker. Folks, I said the most first unselfish prayer in my life. Because prior to that was, Lord, let me make this to buy this. And man, I look good in my BMW. Bought a BMW. My wife wouldn't even drive it because she knew if she dented it, I would go crazy. I worshiped a piece of metal. I'm getting ready to die. And my wife was pregnant with our second baby, due 2 months later. And I leaned over and said the first unselfish prayer of my life. I said, Lord, please let me live to see the birth of my baby. The engines came back on in a millisecond. To this day, the experts don't know how the engines came back on. I believe in miracles. And 2 months later, our beautiful daughter, Amy, was born. There's no such thing as coincidence, is it? My mom and my dad had the most beautiful love affair you could ever dream of. A lady who worked in the school cafeteria so I could have new Levi's, and a dad that worked 32 years in a chemical plant, never complained. And the thing that I'll remember the most is how much they loved each other. And my daddy holding my mama's hand, and she could barely whisper. And this doctor walked in and said she'd be lucky if she lives a year. My mama did this. My daddy walked over and leaned down with every bit of energy my mother could muster. She says, "You fire that doctor." You fire the people in your life that tell you you can't dream big. My daddy walked that doctor out in the hall, and if it had been my mama, she'd have decked him, you think? And my daddy's a true gentleman, never raises his voice. He said, "You're fired." And they hired a new doctor, Dr. John Runge, who loved my mother as a human being. Didn't look at her as a patient, right? If you don't love people, you'll never lead them. Ladies and gentlemen, my mama didn't live 1 year. My mother didn't live 5 years. My mother lived 15 years. Don't quit before the blessing. Folks, there's Carl, my teammate. Carl had a purpose, ladies and gentlemen. His purpose was to get a degree and go back to West Texas and get his children out of his family out of abject poverty. He got out of himself, right? Carl's in heaven next to Mama. Carl was killed in a freak car wreck 2 months after he graduated. And folks, Carl always traveled with me. His spirit's in this room. And I'm as sure as I'm standing here that Carl would want me to tell you this. All of life is like a race with ups and downs and all. And all you have to do to win the race is rise each time you fall. Quit, give up your beaten. Quit, give up your beaten, They still shout in your face. But a stronger voice inside you says, get up and win the race. If you don't love people, you will never lead them. Don't recruit somebody that you're going to abandon, okay? Because if you love people, you're going to take personal ownership for them to reach their dreams, right? Two rules for life, folks. I never tell people what to do. I do some personal coaching. I just ask a lot of questions and listen. But there are two rules that are mandatory, okay? Number one, if you don't love what you do, quit Monday. I'd rather dig a ditch for minimum wage than make $1 million. And by the way, when I was most successful in life is when I was most miserable, but it doesn't have to be that way. Because if your self-worth is your net worth, you're one adversity of being personally bankrupt, right? Number one, listen to the calling of your heart and the true riches of life will follow. Did you hear that? Listen to the calling of your heart. There are 4 characteristics of the world's most effective leaders because the one thing that Ameriplan has to have to go to the next level are more genuine, authentic leaders. Did you hear that? And I'm going to help you understand how to be. The 4 characteristics of the world's most effective leaders. And I want to have a silent exercise for you. I want you to think about the most powerful influence as a positive person in your life. Do you have that person in your heart? Do you? Doesn't take you long, does it? Usually it's a mom, a dad, a preacher, a teacher, a coach, a friend, or a spouse, isn't it? Rarely is it a boss, right? What did John Addison say? A boss is a backwards double SOB. Here's the number one reason you pick that person. Ameriplan leaders, this is what people are looking from you. Number one, they care about you, right? If you don't love people, you'll never lead them. Number 2, they believe in you. Folks, I just gave you the most reliable predictor of success in your life and my life is a degree of belief we have in ourselves, right? Surround yourself with the precious few who believe in you, with dream makers, not dream killers, right? And I know a lot of you in this room said to your family, supposedly your friends, your family said, you're crazy going to work with Ameriplan. There's no security. Any of you have been fired? I was. And you know why I was asked to resign? Because I was politically incorrect. Guess why? I told them the truth. They didn't want to hear it. But see, now I get to do, isn't that neat? Number 1, they care. Number 2, they believe in you. That man, Cleveland Price Jr., let me tell you, I'll tell you a story in a minute. I wanted to quit my freshman year. Now remember, I was an All-American because too many of you are thinking about quitting right now, right? They care, they believe. Number 3 characteristic of a great leader is they're fair, right? No double standards. Same policies and procedures for everybody. See, that's why I love track. Whoever was committed to working the hardest and performing on the track got to carry this baton. And by the way, I was the 8th best quarter miler at the University of Texas my freshman year. But I carried this stick on every mile relay all 4 years. And you know why? I outworked my teammates. And if you beat me, folks, we're going to lose, but you should never like it, right? I'd shake your hand, but I'd be thinking in my mind, you better get out on that track Monday morning an hour early because I'm going to, because next Saturday you're going to shake my hand, right? They care, they believe, they're fair. Would we all agree with that? But the 4th characteristic is one that's too often missing. You can care and believe and be fair, but if the 4th characteristic's not there, if you don't expect excellence, you're not a finished leader.